we get to open up the Word of God and we get to hear from God. And I'm so excited about what I'm getting ready to share for you. Hey, listen, we started this last week, so you may have not seen it when you came in because we kind of changed how we did this. But I'm just a firm believer in taking notes. As a matter of fact, there's a study that has been done that says you're 40% more likely to learn and remember something when you take notes. And so when you came in, you may have seen one of these and picked them up. If you didn't, if you want to raise your hand, I've got some ushers that will bring you one of these this morning just so that you'll have them. Or if you have the church app, guys, we've got some down here on the front row. We've got the church app. You can take notes on that. But I don't want you to miss what God's getting ready to speak into your heart and life today. Keep your hands up. They're going to bring them to you. Because this is so important that I'm just believing that God is going to speak to you and change your life. We're on week 2 of a series that we're calling Essentials, where every week, here's what I've been doing. I'm giving you one thing, one decision that you can make and change in your life that I truly believe has the power and the ability to define your destiny. And we started this last week, and one of the number one decision that we said that we need to make is do whatever God tells us to do. You know, we talked about the story of Jesus turning the water into wine, and you'll remember it was his mother Mary that told the servants that whatever he says to do, go and do it. And that was a crazy moment for them because Jesus didn't say to them, hey, I'm going to turn this water into wine. He just simply said, hey, go and get some water and bring it back and fill up these vessels of purification. And when they were obedient, God acted and worked on their part and turned the water into a miracle. And I just believe that God has got some things in store for our lives. And we've started every week with this foundational statement. And it's on the screen, but it's also in your notes. And it's basically this. It's your decisions and not your desires that determine your destiny. It's your decisions and not your desires that determine your destiny. Like I can desire all day long to have a better marriage, but if I don't act upon it, I don't make a decision to be a better husband, nothing changes in my marriage. If I want to have a better attitude, I can't just say, you know what, I'm going to have it. I've got to act upon it. There's a decision that has to make. If I want to experience God deeper and better than I ever have before, I got to make a decision to do some things that maybe I've not done before. Get up early and come to prayer, read my Bible more, encounter God. I've got to pursue God. I've got to make the decision, and then I've got to act upon that decision in order to see God do that. And that's what we've seen in there. And the Bible is just full of things that God speaks to us and helps us define our decision-making process. And here's the decision-making statement for today that I want to give it to you. And the decision today that we're going to look at is simply this right here. It's in your notes. It's that we need to take a break. We need to take a break. Now, let me just tell you, all of us are products of the decisions we make. Like you don't realize it, but every day you make decisions that determine your destiny. For example, let me just share a few of them with you. A good decision is when maybe a friend is moving and you say, you know what, I'm going to go help my friend move their house. And so you go over there and you make a decision and you get to spend some time with your friends and you get to do all that. And that's a good decision, helping each other out. It's a good decision. A bad decision is calling the student ministry pastor and saying, hey, can some students come help us move? Because how many of you know the students don't really care how they get the stuff moved. They're just going to get the job done, right? Poor two guys on the bottom. I don't know what they were thinking. That's a bad decision. A good decision might be, hey, I'm going to spend more time with friends, or I'm going to change my health. And I'm gonna start the year exercising, and I started this at the beginning of the year. I started exercising more, and it's just a good decision. I feel better. It's a good decision. A bad decision is passing Krispy Kreme when the hot sign's on. Anybody say amen? Don't do that while you're in the fast. I don't believe God's gonna honor that. The last one is this. A good decision might be spending time with family, and you do something you've not done in a while. Go to the zoo. I did this with my family last year. We went down to the zoo, just had a great time. A bad decision is leaving grandma to score things on her own, and she comes across llamas. Anybody ever had a llama spit in your face before? Yeah. Bad decision. So our lives are just full of all these decisions that we make, good and bad decisions. And I want to talk to you about this decision of taking a break. And this is probably one that we don't often think about because it's not something that's easy for us, and it's not something that necessarily that we always think about. But I just believe that it's important for us, if we want to have a healthier life, a happier life, a better life, that we learn to take a break. We learn to take a break. And I'm going to be honest with you. This one's really hard for me. It's hard for me because I'm a very motivated person. Like, my wife will tell you when I get home from quote-unquote work, I pull out my laptop and I go right back to work. I have a hard time disconnecting. But I've learned in my life that it's important to learn to take a break, because when I just work nonstop and I go nonstop, then I get burnt out. And I'm not a good dad. I'm not a good husband. And listen, the world is full of things that pull us away from this. Like think about how many social activities we have. You know, we're a social generation. We're busy, doing this and doing that and doing that. Think about how many different things that the school has to offer students. Or if you're a college student, you know, Lee University, several years back, they decided they're going to do everything they can to keep the kids on the campus. And so they have activity after activity after activity after activity. So it takes up our time. And I'm not saying they're bad things. I'm just saying it becomes busy in our life. And then you have what I just simply call the things of society. So you got to go to work. You've got to go grocery shopping, and you've got all these duties that you got to do, and we don't realize it, but when we constantly go, which is the culture pushing and pulling of us, we get burned out. And I just believe that God is not a God who desires for us to run to the point that we're burned out. As a matter of fact, you can do the study on your own. I don't have time to go through it today, but if you'll do the studies, you'll look and see that now more than ever, people in their 30s and 40s are having more heart attacks and strokes than ever before. And the studies say that the cause of the heart attacks and the strokes is not the pressures of life, but it's the stresses of constantly going nonstop. And I want to speak to somebody today. I don't know. It doesn't matter whether you're 60 or you're 40 or 20 or you're 16. God's desire for you is not to run. God's desire also includes a time of rest where you take a break. And we look at this in Exodus 31:15. And I want to show you God's plan for your life, because I really believe if you'll make this decision, again, you'll be a better person, you'll be a better husband, better friend, better father. You'll just be a better person. This is God's vision for your life. It says for 6 days, work is to be done. Now let me pause right there, because if you're 30 years old and you're still living on mama's recliner or couch, playing video games all day, you need to get a job. Get a job. For 6 days, you're to work. Parents, you can thank me later. Get a job. For 6 days, you are to work. And then notice this, but it says the seventh day is a day of Sabbath rest, holy to the Lord. And then God makes this statement that's really strange to us. It says, whoever does any work on the Sabbath day is to be put to death. Now, we don't go that far. Like, we're not calling people to the courthouse and saying, hey, your pay stub says you worked 60 hours, we're stoning you. Like, I mean, might be interesting to see, but we don't do that. We don't go that. But there is something that we do that's very similar to that we don't even realize. And that's the fact that we'll work ourselves so bad and so hard and so long that it literally robs, steals, and kills us. It destroys our relationships. It destroys our marriages. It destroys friendships, because we respond out of stress and not out of rest. So watch this. Here's God's plan and God's desire for your life. The very next verse 16 says this: the Israelites are to observe the Sabbath, celebrating it. And notice for how long it says. for the generations to come. Which means this wasn't just something to be practiced in this generation in Exodus, but it was something to continue from generation to generation to generation. We are part of the generation in which God says, you need to take a break. And then look what he goes on and says, for this is a lasting covenant. It will be a sign between me and the Israelites forever. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day, guess what he did? He rested and was refreshed. Man, if you don't have that underlined in your Bible, you need that's so needed in our society. We need a day of rest and refreshment. I don't know about you, but I crave rest and refreshment. I need that. So don't miss this, because if there's anyone who really did not need to take a break, it was God. Like he didn't create man one day and go, man, I am worn out. Look at that. No. He could have created everything just like that. But he didn't. He took time and he rested and he was refreshed. He took a time to where he could enjoy everything. You see, the problem is too many people work themselves to death and they never enjoy the life that God wanted them to live. Like you can't enjoy life if you constantly go. And so watch this. God says there's a reason you never enjoy life and you're so miserable. Because you are, watch this, you're breaking the covenant I made with you. He made a covenant. It wasn't like, hey, I'm going to make a recommendation for you to take a break. No. I'm going to make a covenant with you that's holy. So when you don't take a break, you are breaking the covenant that God has made with you. And when you look at it in that light, it becomes much heavier than what we see. Now, I recognize that some of you are probably new to the faith, and the word Sabbath may be confusing for you. So let me break it down for you. It's in your notes. Here's what the word Sabbath means. It means a time to cease from work or to rest. In other words, here's what it means. For one day, I can do anything except for work. So if I'm an accountant, for one day, I don't account. If I'm a tax collector, for one day, I don't collect taxes. Can I get an amen? Come on, somebody. If I'm a doctor, I don't doctor. If I'm a surgeon, I don't do. If I'm a pastor, I don't prepare or preach on one day of the week. And I can tell you, for me, I just started doing this about 3 years ago. It's a shame that I waited so long. But it has changed and transformed my life. Every week, I take one day and I do what I want to do. And at the end of the day, I am so rested and I am so refreshed, ready to take on whatever comes. Here's what it's like for me. So for me, it may be I go fishing, or I may go hiking, or do what I love best. I may take my granddaughter and say, let me have my granddaughter. Now, that may not be fun for you, but it's fun for me to hang out with my granddaughters. I do what I want to do so that I can rest and be refreshed. And believe it or not, I am a better person. My wife will tell you I'm a better husband. My kids will tell you I'm a better dad. My grandkids will tell you I'm a better grandfather. My friends will tell you I'm a better friend. Those that I work with say I'm a better person. You will be a better individual if you'll take time to rest. And I know what some of you are probably thinking, especially if you've been in church for a long time. Well, isn't Sunday the Sabbath and you're up there standing working, Pastor? Well, somebody's got to do it. No, here's the reality. The reality is theologians have studied this for quite some time, trying to figure out what the calendar looked like. There wasn't really a calendar when God created this. And so a lot of them will say that the Sabbath is on a Saturday. Some will say the Sabbath is on a Sunday. But here's what I want to communicate to you today. When God makes this statement, he's not emphasizing the day. He's emphasizing the work that needs to rest on. Like there's a time that you are to take a break. There's a time that you don't practice things, but you apply the principle. And so let me give you 3 real quick things that'll help you understand what God means when he says you need to take a break, you need to take a Sabbath. The first is this, that taking a break, it's in your notes, is a command. And I know immediately when I say command, some of you are like, I ain't listening to nothing else. You ain't going to tell me. See, culture tells us that we are not to be told what to do. You do you live your life the way you want to, and don't worry about what anybody else says. And the problem with that is we don't understand how God intends for us to live our life. And when we don't live our life the way God wants and desires, then we don't live a fruitful and blessed life. So here's what I need you to understand. When you hear the word command, it's not in a negative connotation. When God gives a command, it's different than how we perceive it. As a matter of fact, write it down in your notes like this. His commandments aren't given to punish us, but rather they're there to protect us. And this started in the Garden of Eden when Adam and Eve was created. The Bible says that God told Adam and Eve they could eat of any fruit in the land, but they were to stay away from one tree. And the enemy comes, watch this, the enemy comes and convinces them that God is punishing them or trying to change their mind, that they don't become like him. And they think that God, he's convincing them that God is punishing them. And what they don't realize is God is protecting them, because God was protecting them from what would happen when they partook of the fruit. And that was their eyes were open to the evil in the world. You see, God is not here to necessarily punish us with commands. He puts them there so that we can protect. It continues on with Israel. When God delivered them from the pain and punishment that came as slaves to Pharaoh, he made them a promise that if they would be his people, he would be their God. And God would protect them. But when they would turn away from God, other nations would come in and they would be punished over and over and over and over. And then God says, you know what? They obviously can't get it when I speak it. So I'm going to write it down for them. And he calls Moses to the top of the mountain, and with God's very finger, he inscribes what we now know as 10 commandments on a stone. And he tells Moses, take these down and share them with the people. It was things like this. You shall have no other gods before me. In other words, he said, I'll make you a commandment. It's called the Mosaic commandment. If you'll be my people, I'll be your God. Can I put it another way? If you'll be my people, I'll be your protector. If you'll be my people, I'll be your provider. If you'll be my people, I will guard you, watch after you, take care of you. God gave them a command that wasn't to punish them, but was actually to protect them and provide for them. How about this one? You shall not take the Lord's name in vain. You shall not worship any idols. Honor your mother and your father so that you will live long in the land. Thou shalt not steal. I can go down the list, but right there in the middle comes a command in Exodus 28-11. Listen to what it says. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but on the seventh day is a Sabbath day to who? To the Lord. On it you shall not do any work. Now I want to tell you something that I've seen I never really recognized before. When you read the 10 Commandments, what you'll discover is the majority of the 10 Commandments, God will say, thou shalt not do this, or thou shalt do this, and it's just like a 1 line or 2 line. But when you get to this particular commandment of the Sabbath and keeping it holy, God wrote a whole paragraph. Why would God write a whole paragraph? Because he knew that it would be something that we would wrestle and struggle with, and something that we would fight against. And he wanted us to understand that we need a time of break. Notice what he continues to say. Neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that's in them, but he rested on the seventh day. And then look at what it says. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and he made it holy. Now here's the deal. We will agree with all the others. Thou shalt not kill. I agree. Thou shalt not steal. I agree. Thou shalt not have any other gods. I agree. But when it gets to this one, the majority of the people break this commandment. They don't take a time to rest. They'll abide by all the others. They'll adhere to all the other things because they know that there's a consequence that comes with it. But there's also a consequence comes when you don't obey God. It will wear you down, wear you out, and it will break up your relationships with other people. And the problem is, when we don't do what God tells us to do, really what happens is God says, you know what? If you're not going to be my people and you're not going to obey, I'm simply going to take a step back. Remember last week when I said, God says, come near to me and I'll come near to you? Well, the same thing's true. When you take a step back, God says, okay. You think you know better, go right ahead. And so we need to understand that taking a break is a commandment from God. It's not a recommendation, it's a commandment. Here's the second thing. Taking a break, it's in your notes, is for our benefit. It's for our benefit. And this is really a kind of a new revelation that God has given me of recent. It's that anytime God tells me to do something, it's not for his sake. It's usually either for the betterment of me or for the betterment of someone else. Because when you really think about it, God himself is all sufficient. He lacks nothing. He needs nothing. He don't have to have anything. So when he tells us to do this, he's got a purpose in it. For example, whenever God instructs us to do something like give a tithe to him, it's not because he's sitting up in heaven and going, you know what? I made all these expansions to all these mansions and we got so many more people. I need people to give money. No. Malachi says it this way. When you give your tithe, he says he'll open up the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing on you so great that you can't even contain it. And just like God is God and God is so good, he says, and I'm going to add a little something extra. I'll rebuke the devourer for your sake. That's why at Mount Olive, whenever I get up here and I take up the offering, I say, listen, when we talk about giving at Mount Olive, I'm not wanting something from you like some pastors do. No, I want something for you. I want God to sling open the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing on you. I want God to rebuke the devourer for your sake. God does this for our benefit. It's not to punish us. So again, our obedience is something that we do to obey God because God has something in store. In other words, his commands are not meant to be burdensome, but rather they're a path to unleash his blessings. So now let me put this in perspective of the Sabbath, because I know that sometimes we'll use work as an excuse as to why we can't take a break. Like, I've got to provide for my family, and I've got to provide for a house and food and kids' clothing and schools and all this. And when we do that, and when we say that, and we think that, here's what we do. We become the God of our own life. Because we think that it's up to us to provide. When God says, I provide all your needs according to the riches in heaven. Now, does he use our jobs? Does he use our work to do that? Absolutely. But it's our responsibility to turn our mindset to the understanding that God's wanting us to take a break because it's for our benefit. So we don't end the week with rest, we begin the week with rest. As a matter of fact, you may think it's an Old Testament thing, but listen to what Mark writes in Mark 2:27. It says this, then Jesus said to them, the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of the people and not the people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath. In other words, it's not just some religious practice that's to be upheld simply to please and obey God, but Jesus says it's actually for your benefit that you take a break. So students, at times, take a break from studying. Don't cram all night for a test. Study as much as you can and then rest. Because what good does it do you if you go in to take an exam and you're worn out? Husbands, don't work 16 hours a day and come home and expect to have an ideal marriage. Because all the stress of work, you're going to bring home to your wife and your kids. It's a whole different way to look at it. Well, what does a biblical model of rest look like? Let me give it to you. It's in your notes. I think it's like this. It starts out by being daily. And daily means this. I'm going to unplug from my responsibilities. So daily, I'm going to take a break. I'm not going to work 18 hours a day. I'm going to work for a period. But when I come home at night, I'm not going to turn on my TV. I'm not going to be distracted by anything else. I'm actually just going to take a moment and rest. I can't tell you how much this has changed my life. Because I carry the burdens of the church with me everywhere I go. But I've just decided that every day I'm going to unplug from my responsibilities and I'm simply going to come home and I'm going to say, God, you're so good, you're so merciful, you're so graceful, and I'm just going to rest for a moment. Can I tell you what else it is? It looks like weekly, where we actually take the entire day off. That is that Sabbath day where we say, you know what, I'm going to do something that gives me rest, that gives me refreshment. I'm going to take a day where I'm not going to do anything but just enjoy the day. And then I think it looks like seasonally, where I enjoy more than just a day. And I call this vacation. Now, I want to be honest with you. About 2 years ago, my wife and I went on vacation. And we were getting ready to go into 21 days of prayer. And I know that I had to create the focus for the prayer. I knew how to create each day's focus and ideal and devotion and all that. And so I took my computer with me, and for 4 days, every chance that I got, I pulled my computer out, and I would start typing, and I'd work, and I'd type, and I'd work, and I'd be on my cell phone as we were walking places, back and forth, and back and forth, and back and forth. And on day 6, when we got ready to drive home, I got in the car, and I said this to my wife. I said, man, I feel like I need a vacation. And she said, you do need a vacation because you didn't take a vacation. You say, well, Pastor, how do you see this being seasonally in the Bible? Where there's a passage of Scripture where God tells the Israelites, every 7th year, you're to let the ground rest. So there's seasons where you need to rest. Pastor Ty, I've learned when I go on vacation now that I don't respond to every call. I don't take my computer and work on vacation. I rest because if I don't rest, I come back more burnt out than when I went. Because God blesses it when I take a rest and obey His commands. There's seasons in your life where you have to make a conscious decision to disconnect. And on that day, I made a conscious decision that from then on out, I would totally disconnect when I'm on vacation. So here's the way that I wrote it down, and you've got it in front of you. As long as you are working on it, you don't have time to enjoy it. So as long as I'm working on that day of rest, I don't have time to enjoy it. As long as I'm working on my vacation, I don't have time to enjoy it. And the fruit of that is not rest, it's restlessness. You become more frustrated. And I want you to see this because I've never thought of it this way before until I started preparing this message. But this is really how God laid it out in Genesis when He created the earth. And I've got our media team that's going to put it on the screen, so I want you to see this. The Bible says on day 1 that He created light, and then He looked at it, and He said this. He said, it is good, and then He rested. He didn't make anything else. Day 2 comes around, He creates the atmosphere, He steps back, and He says, it is good, and He rested. Day 3 comes around, and He creates dry land and plants, and He says, it is good, and He steps back, and He rests. Day 5 comes around, He creates the fish and birds, He steps back, He says, it is good, and it rests. Day 6 comes around, He creates the land, animals, and man. He steps back, He says, it is good, and then He rests. Can I just encourage you on something today? Every day there needs to be a time where you say, you know what? It's okay for me not to mow the yard today, but I'm going to simply rest. I've done enough for today. There's times when I get off work and say, you know what? I've done enough for this day. I'm going to enjoy my kids. I'm going to enjoy my wife. If it was important to God, why shouldn't it be important to us? So you need to learn to take a break. And here's the way that I look at it. Sometimes you just need to learn to leave it. You just need to learn to leave it. Like the world is not going to crumble around you if you just leave it for a moment and rest. I used to think, man, if my hand wasn't connected to the church all the time, man, the whole church is going to fall apart. I'll never forget when one of my staff members said, hey, you can set your phone to an auto text, an auto call. When somebody calls you while you're on vacation, it'll tell them, hey, there's another number you can call, and we've got plenty of staff that can take care of whatever they need. If it's an emergency, we'll call your wife. I'll never forget how hard that was for me to take that break because my mind was constantly on that. But I had to learn to leave it. And when I learned to leave it, I became that better dad, that better husband, that better grandfather, that better friend, that better pastor. You got to learn, there's got to be times where you just leave it. You just got to learn to leave it. Here's the third thing, final thing. Pastor Brian's coming. Is that taking a break is about trusting God. It's about trusting God. And this is really a big one. What we're really saying is when we don't take a break is that, God, I just don't trust you to handle it. I don't trust you. So I'm going to put it in a different perspective. And I don't want to offend my staff, but when I was answering the phone and making calls and all that while I was on vacation, I just basically thought, well, you know what? I need to do this on my own. And what I was really saying to the rest of the team is, I don't trust you to be able to do what you can do. And I think the same thing happens to us with God. That when we take control over every situation and we push ourselves, what we're saying to God is, God, I just don't trust you. I got to work 60 hours, God, because I don't trust you to provide for my family. I've got to work that extra shift, God, because I just don't trust you to meet my needs. And so I can just imagine God going, man, they just don't get it. They can have it both ways. Well, what do you mean by that, Pastor? Well, you can have God provide for you, and you can also have rest. You can have God meet all of your needs, but you can also have refreshment. But the issue is that we want to control everything, because that's the way that our culture has created us to be. It's not the way God intended for it to be. He intended for you to take a time of rest, to take a break. So you're not supposed to do this thing alone. We think that we're in it by ourselves. But I love the way that Ezekiel says it in Ezekiel 20:12. He says, also, I gave them my Sabbaths as a sign between us, so they would know that I, the Lord, made them holy. God's desire is for you to rest, to be holy by obeying His commands. I've learned this right here, that when I work, I work. It's in your notes that way. When I work, I work. So whenever I'm at work, I work. But here's what I've learned just in the last 2 years, that when I rest, God works. So I've had to learn not to be a control freak. My team will tell you that I'm not into every detail of what they do. I trust them. I've learned that God has got this. This is really not my church anyways. It belongs to God. And so when I rest, God works. And we're in this thing together. There's a period where I'm working, and there's a period where God's working, but I trust God in the middle of it all. Isn't there so much freedom to know that you can rest and God will be working? Isn't that a beautiful thing? I know there's probably a couple people in here that's thinking, you know, that's kind of an Old Testament principle, take a Sabbath. That said it was given to the Israelites. Yeah, but it also said it was given from generation to generation. Let me prove it to you. The writer of Hebrews wrote this: there remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God. There is a rest that remains for you. There is a rest that is available to you. And I tell you, I think there's some people in here, you're just so exhausted. You're just so tired. You're just so wore out because you've just not been practicing this. You've not applied this principle to your life. And you can't understand, why are you always miserable? Why are you always on edge? Could it be that you're just not resting? Can I show you this real quick? I'm going to ask them to put that creation story back up because this is so cool. Day 1, God creates a light. Day 2, He creates atmosphere. 3, land and plants. 4, sun, moon, stars. 5, fish and birds. Day 6, land, animals, and man. And I got to thinking, Pastor Roxanne, what would it have been like to have been Adam and Eve in the garden? God creates Adam, and here he is in the garden, and God says, I'm going to give you some things I want you to do. I want you to name all the animals in the garden, and I want you to take care of it. You're going to steward the garden. And Adam's like, yes, God's giving me something to do, and I'm raring, and I'm ready to go, and he wants to get at it. And he's like, yeah, I think I got a name for that one. I think I got a name. And I've never caught this until this week. But as soon as God creates man, and man's mentality is, man, I got to go to work. God says, we're going to rest. So it wasn't just God that rested on the seventh day, but the very creation on the day he's created, the next day he rested. The problem is our mentality is, I'm going to rest from what I've done. God's mentality is, I'm going to rest so that I can get it done. I'm going to be refreshed and restored so that I can enjoy what God has for me. And what's cool on that is that it goes both ways. So I rest when I start, but I also look forward to there's another rest coming. There remains a rest. It's not just a rest for today, but there's a rest coming up. And I look forward to that day of rest. There is a rest that remains. As you stand with me today, here's the time I call decision time. And the decision is this: what am I to do with what God has spoken today? Now I get, there's probably a lot of you in here, you think that this is totally irrelevant to you. Like, no, I've got it all under control. I've got everything. But you're wrestling in areas of your life and you can't understand why. I'm telling you, God has given you a commandment, a covenant, to take a time to rest. A time of peace. As a matter of fact, I love what Jesus said in Matthew 11:28. He said, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Where's my rest come from? My rest is intentional in what I do, because remember what I said last week, that when we take the step forward, God takes a step forward, the first responsibility, the first action we have to take is that we take the step. He says, you come to me. You who are weary and heavy burdened, you come to me and I will give you rest. There's an action that has to take place where we say, okay, God, I'm going to bring all my burdens, all my weariness, and I'm going to give it to you. Then notice what he says. He says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Learn from me. Learn from him. What did he do? He rested. Learn from him. Learn. If it was important to God, it's got to be important to us. Learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. I know it's 12:11. I know on your mind you've already got fried chicken there, some cornbread, all them things. You got things you know you got to do. We got to rush out of here. Pastor, man, he preached too long today. Man, not even really a topic that I just, for just a moment, I want to invite you to do something with me. Close your eyes. And just for a moment, just take a deep breath and just think about that passage. Come to me, all ye who are weary and heavy burden. As if God has opened up his word today and he's speaking directly to you. He's inviting you to come to him today, to bring all your anxieties, all that heaviness, all the worries, all the fears, everything that's been bothering you, troubling you. He says, come to me. Come to me. Why are you carrying it? I never intended for you to carry it. I'm the burden remover, the yoke destroyer. I never intended for you to carry it. For just a moment, I'm going to ask Pastor Brian to sing a song, and I want to just give you a chance maybe to take a step, and maybe you need to do this for your own mind's sake, but you need to physically take a step towards the altar as if you're saying, I'm